everyone, welcome here. If you're new here, my name is Rebecca. If you're not new here, welcome back. Thank you for coming back and watching another video. So this week's video, as you can probably tell from the title, is a Q&A. So I asked you all to send me some questions, both here on YouTube and over on Instagram. And you guys sent me so many good questions, like good, thoughtful, thought-provoking questions. And there was a lot, so I'm gonna answer as many as I can. The vast majority were about minimalism, so I'm gonna start with some questions on minimalism, and then later in the video I have some questions on zero waste, veganism, yoga, just life in general. So I'm gonna try and keep this sort of concise and organized, and I'll put some timestamps in the description down below. If there's one section that you're more interested than the other, you can kind of skip ahead. And I will say that right behind minimalism for the sheer volume of questions I got was also about my dog Gypsy and advice on having a dog and raising a dog. There's lots of questions about like training dogs off leash and things like that. And I'm so sorry if you submitted one of those questions, but I don't think I'm going to answer any of those questions in this video. The truth is, Gypsy is my first dog. We've only had her for 6 months, and I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't feel qualified to like give anybody advice on how to train their dog or how to raise their dog. I'm still learning, and I still have a lot to learn. So if you were someone who submitted one of those questions, I got it, I read it. Thank you so much for submitting a question. But maybe further down the road, when I have a little bit more experience with a dog, I will feel more comfortable answering those questions. All right, with all that said, let's dive in. All right, so let's start with some questions on minimalism. And I apologize if I'm looking down in a lot of this video, but I have my laptop down here and I'm reading some of the questions off it, so I apologize if I'm not looking at you. All right, so I'm actually going to answer 2 questions together to start. The first is from Hannah HKT from Instagram, and she said, why did you start minimalism? And then I got another question from Ariane G on YouTube, and they ask, were you and Murphy both minimalists when you met? If not, did you make the transition together? So these 2 questions kind of go together. Murphy and I were not minimalists when we met, and while we did kind of make the transition together, I feel like I kind of spearheaded that. I was a little bit more into it than he was, but over time we kind of evolved together as a couple. And the reason why we started minimalism, I think, is not the reason that everyone would assume, which is that it was because we were transitioning from living in a house to living in a van. And while that did kind of push our minimalism to the next level, it ultimately came from a place of overwhelm. I was living this life where I was working 7 days a week. I had a 9-to-5 job that really extended beyond 9 to 5. It was more like a 60-hour-a-week job, and owning a business on the side as a side hustle that took up most of my free time that my 9-to-5 job didn't take up. And I just was getting really, really overwhelmed with that commitment of my career, but also just like the things in my life suffocating me and feeling like I had to take care of those things and keep those things clean. And I just was feeling so suffocated in my life by so many things. And it really was the evaluation of things in my life, right? What people typically think of as minimalism, the decluttering of your stuff, that was the catalyst for me to be able to then evaluate what other things brought value to me in my life. So it ultimately started minimalism from a place of being burnt out and being in a place where I felt overwhelmed, and saying to myself, how do I begin to lay the foundation to build a life that feels meaningful and fulfilling and filled with things that add value? And that really started with like the physical items in my life. All right, the next question comes from HL Honey on YouTube, and they ask, have you and your husband become happier living with less? Was it a hard adjustment? So I'll start with the second part of that question first, which is, was it a hard adjustment for us? Absolutely not. I think we were both really ready for it, and for me at least, I could really see the value in this lifestyle, and it was exciting to me more than anything else. I don't think there was much of really an adjustment period. So have we become happier living with less? Happiness is such a difficult thing to measure. I would say in a lot of ways, yes, we have become happier living with less. We're both very much on the same page about it, which helps a lot. But the thing is when you remove the physical things in your life that take up space and clutter up your mind, it clears space for you to start to think about other deeper, more meaningful things. So while yes, I would say we're happier living with less, but it's also forced me to uncover other things internally that need work. So it's been a catalyst for growth, which I think ultimately leads to greater happiness. Or Carrie Ann from Instagram asks, how do you deal with sentimental items? Do you still have a stash in Massachusetts? So I think as a minimalist, I have a little bit of an advantage in that I'm not super sentimental about things. So I already had a proclivity for getting rid of things even before I discovered minimalism. But I do have sentimental items and I deal with it in a few ways. So the first way is that if there's something that I want to kind of hold on to that memory, I want to remember it, but I don't feel like I need the physical item, I take a photo of it. And I also have a bin that is set aside that houses just sentimental items, again, that I like to go through from time to time. The thing that I like to think about when I'm evaluating a sentimental item is, what joy has it brought me lately? If it's something that you're keeping but you never actually look at or hold or enjoy, is it really something that you need to be keeping around? For the most part, we stash away sentimental items. They're very rarely interacted with, so are they really adding value to your life anyways? And the second part of that question is, no, I do not have a stash of sentimental items in Massachusetts. For a little while, I did have some things in my parents' attic that honestly I had completely forgotten were even there. But just this past holiday season in 2019, my mom was like, girl, get your stuff out of my attic. And I was like, I hear you, Mom. So I did clean out the things that were in their attic. So I don't have anything other than what I have in this house here. Right. VW Sunny 22 asks, how do you kindly tell someone close to you to stop giving you knickknacks, cards, etc.? Oh, this is a good question. I actually get a lot of variations of this question. I kind of think it depends on your relationship with that person. If they're a person who once in a while they give you something, maybe you don't have a really open line of communication with them, I'm in the camp of like, just accept the gift. Say thank you. They're trying to do something that will make you happy, and it will make them happy for you to accept that gift. And then you can evaluate whether or not you want to keep it, or you could always donate it to somebody else or re-gift it to somebody else. Sometimes just depending on your relationship with that person, it might not be worthwhile to have the conversation. But if you do want to have that conversation, I think the best thing to do is do it well in advance of an event where you think they might give you a gift, like a birthday or the holidays, and be honest and give alternatives. So for instance, if you're looking ahead to the holidays this year, you might start to introduce the idea now in the summertime that you've adopted a minimalist lifestyle and that you're trying to live with less. Perhaps for Christmas or whatever you celebrate, instead of gifts this year, maybe it's an experience. Like, could we all go on a trip together? Although, I don't know if that can happen in this 2020 pandemic, but you get the idea. Like, maybe we can all do something together instead of getting each other gifts. And honestly, your loved ones might not go for that, but that doesn't matter. You've now planted the seed in their head that gifts don't have to be the only thing that are exchanged and that you might not be open to the gift. It's honestly a really delicate conversation because gift giving really isn't just about the receiver, it's also about the giver. I say tread lightly, start to introduce people to the lifestyle and what it means and what the value system is around it. I find a lot of the times people begin to understand and respect that value system. Kay Russo on YouTube asks, what is one luxury item that you enjoy and would pay for at almost any cost? I can think of two things off the top of my head. The first is locally grown organic food. To me, the food that you put in your body and the impact that it has on you and the earth is one of the most important things you can spend your money on, and I'm willing to spend a fair amount of money on it. And the second item is ethically made clothing. I would much rather spend my money on high quality clothes that are going to last me a long time and that are gentle on the earth and the people who produce them, rather than pay a lower cost for like a fast fashion piece. Celia White from YouTube asks, when you first embraced minimalism, were there items that you had a hard time parting with, and do you keep any holiday decor? So the answer to the first part of that question is no. I feel like if there's an item that I have a hard time parting with, I shouldn't be parting with it. The method in which I evaluate what to keep as a minimalist is really like what adds value to my life. If I'm feeling a particular connection to something, I don't want to get rid of it. So the second part, do I have any holiday decor? The answer to that is kind of. So a lot of the holiday decor that I had previously kind of falls under sentimental items to me. My family had a tradition where we bought an ornament every year when we went on a family vacation to Maine. And so those have some sentimental value to me, even though I don't typically decorate for the holidays. So I kept a lot of that stuff more from a sentimental point of view than a decor point of view. So I don't really have things I like put out for the holidays, but I also don't typically celebrate the holidays in my home. My parents' house is kind of the place where we all congregate for holidays. So I don't have any like typical decor that I put out. Hannah HKT from Instagram. Oh, second question from Hannah. What do others think about your minimalism? This kind of runs the gamut. There's definitely people who are like, that's crazy. Why would you do that? You're living with nothing. So I do think that there's like a camp of people who, when I talk about minimalism, they sort of think it's about deprivation and maybe don't agree or understand with the idea that having less can unlock more for you in your life. I get very aspirational responses from people of like, oh, I wish I could do that, or it must be so nice, or you must feel so free. And my answer to all of that is like, yes, and also you can do it. So for the most part, it is positive. All right, Charlotte20 from Instagram asks, how has minimalism helped you define your style? I think what's so interesting about minimalism and personal style, and I'm talking really just about like clothing style, like fashion style, is that my mindset has really shifted to practicality and how do I marry my personal style with the practical use of the clothing. And I think I'm still struggling with this a little bit. I think I'm in a very evolutionary place in my style in terms of coming into a more mature fashion sense, but also making sure my pieces are practical and fit with my lifestyle. So minimalism has helped me really evaluate when I'm going to buy a piece of clothing. I really think about the exact instance in which I would wear this. Like, what's the weather like when I'm wearing this? What is the activity that I'm doing? Is this an activity that I do enough that warrants me to buy an entire piece of clothing around that? So it's really helped me be more discerning in my personal style. Let's answer some questions about veganism. Bernice Taylor 2 from Instagram asks, how long have you been vegan? And how did you become so? So I've been vegan for 8 years. And I don't have one of those veganism stories where I woke up one day and like a switch flipped and I was like, today I'm gonna start being vegan. It happened really, really slowly for me. And it was kind of like the more that I started researching different parts of my diet, the more adopting a vegan lifestyle made sense. And I think there's a lot of pathways into veganism. It can be about the morality around killing and eating animals. It can be around environmental concerns or health concerns. And my biggest and most prominent pathway in was definitely around the morality of killing and eating animals. That was really my introduction to it. But then once I began to understand a little bit more about the environmental impact of animal agriculture and the impact on my overall health of eating animals, all those things kind of snowballed into eventually becoming vegan. All right, the next question is like a little bit of an involved and slightly controversial question. It comes from BB on YouTube and they ask, how do you feel about non-vegan items secondhand? I think the wallet might be leather. She's talking about the wallet that I had in my last video, but can't tell. I was mostly curious if you feel like it encourages the use of animals. I'm not vegan, so this question comes with no judgment, complete curiosity. Thank you for that question. And it's kind of a big one and it kind of warrants its own entire video, but I'll give you my short answer on this, which is I am not opposed to buying secondhand leather goods as a vegan. I feel like saying that vegans can't use or wear or own secondhand leather because vegans don't use animal products is measuring it simply on definition only and not thinking about the deeper supply chain that's associated with that. So if you're looking at this from an animal cruelty standpoint, there was no animals harmed in the purchasing of a secondhand leather good. It's really only like a first-hand leather purchase that increases the demand for more leather to be made. So when you think about buying something secondhand, it's not like when you purchase that leather piece secondhand, a thrift store is going to go out and demand to restock that item. They're only reselling what comes into them. And when you're buying something secondhand, you're not contributing to the material costs or the footprint of producing and shipping something new. So by my very own moral compass, yes, I would purchase something secondhand leather. As a side note, I don't know if that wallet is made of leather. It was advertised on the website I bought it from as being a faux leather product, but if I'm honest, like it really feels like real leather. So I don't know, but it honestly doesn't matter to me. It did not contribute to an increased demand in animal product, and it didn't contribute to an increase in animal cruelty. However, I do think there's another side to this argument that is if we are, as vegans, wearing or carrying things that are leather, we're kind of perpetuating this idea that things that are made from animals are desirable or acceptable to have and own. I think an example of this is the wallet that I featured in my last video. It's the second time I've put that wallet in a video and I get lots of comments of people being like, what's the brand? I want one. And honestly, I'm not going to tell you what the brand is. It's my responsibility that I'm carrying a maybe leather wallet And I don't want anybody to think that that's a desirable thing to have. So it can be difficult as a vegan to have people understand the mindset around why you would be vegan, and carrying something that is leather, even if it's secondhand, it can be hard to justify that narrative, especially in a quick conversation with somebody. So it just gets really convoluted really quickly, and I can understand why someone would be like, just no leather in my life as a vegan. That was a deep one. All right, we have a few more here. Charlatte20 from Instagram asks, what's the biggest misconception people have about zero waste living? The biggest misconception is that zero waste living is actually zero waste. I really don't like the term zero waste because that's almost an impossibility. It's really a low waste lifestyle. As humans, it is very, very difficult to live a life that is completely zero waste. And you might see those videos of people who like have a tiny mason jar and they're like, this is my trash for the whole year. Yes, that's amazing. I want to applaud those efforts for sure, but there's a lot of other waste that goes into producing products, even that are a green, low impact product that's not just the end consumer piece of trash. Melissa Talbot from YouTube says, Gypsy's so cute. I agree. And she says, what cleaner do you use for mopping, and what's your favorite thing to cook? For mopping, I use what I clean the rest of my house with, which is basically white vinegar, water, and lemon essential oil. And I just spray it on the floor and mop it up. And my favorite thing to cook kind of changes all the time, but for the past several months, I think ever since we got back from Southeast Asia, I've been really into cooking curry, because you can kind of put anything in there that you want and then spice it up with some curry, and it's always delicious. All right, I have a few questions about yoga here. So Lauren DeFrank from Instagram says, how long have you been practicing yoga and how did you start? This is actually kind of a long story. I'll just tell a really quick story here. I've been practicing yoga for 16 years and I started kind of out of necessity. I used to be a big distance runner. I ran marathons, I ran every day. It was like a real ingrained part of my identity. And then for a myriad of reasons, I could no longer run. And my doctor recommended to me that I try yoga instead. Yoga hadn't really hit the mainstream yet, and all I knew was that it was like stretching. And I was like, that's not a workout. I don't want to do that. And I very reluctantly went to my first yoga class, but very quickly learned that not only was it a workout for sure, it had so many benefits beyond just the physical. And while I do still occasionally run from time to time, yoga has been the central thing that I do with my body for the past 16 years. H. Ritchie from Instagram said, would you do yoga classes for viewers? And Don Williams from YouTube also said, are you offering any yoga classes online? I think it would be super uplifting to do yoga with you. Heart. Oh. Heart back to you, Don. So I am not currently teaching yoga. It's the first time in 8 years that I have not actively been teaching yoga classes, and I miss it a lot. But to be honest, I don't know if teaching yoga online is the avenue for me at this time. I've thought a lot, especially during this pandemic, about recording some classes and putting them up on YouTube. It's a little incongruous with the content on my channel right now and the style of video that I do. I don't think it would necessarily fit on this channel, but that doesn't mean I couldn't start another channel with yoga. So I guess this is a long way of saying, I don't really know. I want to get back to teaching, but I don't really know if that's going to be online. In person is not really an option right now. Sorry, I know that wasn't really an answer. It was only kind of an answer. All right, Amy Pizer, I'm so sorry if I'm butchering your name, Amy, from YouTube, asked a lot of questions, and a lot of them I've answered up until this point, but she has a few more. Do you meal prep or even just plan ahead, or do you wing it day to day? This is something else I would like to get better about doing. And have you started growing some produce now that you are in a house? I have not started growing produce. Gypsy, do you want to say hello? Hi. Thank you. Oh, right in the mouth. So I have not started growing produce yet. I do plan to have a garden, but summertime in the desert is not the time to start it. So I'm thinking this fall I'll probably start it. And I also do not meal prep. I would much rather go down to the farmer's market and grab what is looking good for any particular week rather than hunting around for I need basil for this recipe. I don't want to do that. I want to buy stuff that looks good and then kind of make up my own things to cook from day to day. All right, we got 3 more questions here. They're all just kind of random questions. Lauren DeFrank asks, what's your favorite place you have hiked in the US? Oh. I'm gonna say it's kind of a tie between Arches in Utah and Zion National Park in Utah. All right, second to last question. Nails Did by Liz on Instagram says, is Joshua Tree a pleasant place to live? I guess it depends on what your definition of pleasant is. I really like it here because I love the hot, dry weather. I came from a very cold, wet climate, and I didn't want any more of that in my life. So to me, like, this is perfection. I think a lot of people don't understand why we chose to live in Joshua Tree, because it is the desert, because it's not a city. We are a little bit out in the middle of nowhere, but to me, that's kind of what I wanted at this point in my life. It was really about access to me. So in the younger years of my life, I chose to live in urban areas because I wanted access to good restaurants and the best jobs and nightlife and people. But the older that I've gotten and the more I've really evaluated what's important to me and what brings me the most joy is access to the outdoors. And so access to the outdoors has become one of the most important things to me. But it's not like I don't have access to those things. LA is 2 hours away, San Diego is 2 hours away. So I just kind of flipped the accessibility in my life, right? Instead of the outdoors being 2 hours away, now it's a city that's 2 hours away. And that's just what was important to me. The last question is from Bushra Solomon on YouTube. How do you feel with a shaved head? Well, here's the thing. I really like the practicality of having a shaved head. It dries really quickly. I don't have to style it. I don't really have to do anything to it. It's super easy. But from a personal style standpoint, I don't like it. Especially this short, like it doesn't really fit my personal style. There isn't a lot that I can do with it in terms of like actually styling my hair at this point. I have a really hard time feeling feminine with my hair this short. So I do still think it was like the right decision for me to shave off my dreadlocks, but I don't really feel like me and I don't really feel very feminine. All right, that's it for the Q&A. I tried to answer all the questions. If you sent me a question and I didn't answer it, I'm sorry. I tried to get to as many as I could. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe down below. I put out new videos every Tuesday, and I will see you on the next one. Bye, everyone. If you don't have much of a voice today, let's start over. Oh, I thought for a second I wasn't recording. I don't really know what I'm doing. That was weird. My computer went to sleep. For 8 years. 8 cheers. Cheers!